This is the summary of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Habit 1. Be proactive. Habit 1 is the foundation of everything that follows. Covey teaches that being proactive means taking full responsibility for your life, your choices, your attitude, and your actions. It's about recognizing that you have control over how you respond to situations, even when you can't control what happens around you. Covey contrasts this with being reactive. Reactive people blame their environment, other people, or their circumstances. You'll hear them say things like, "I can't help it. That's just how I am," or "they made me mad." But when you say things like that, you're giving away your power. Here's a simple example. Imagine you're stuck in traffic. A reactive person gets angry, curses at other drivers, and arrives at work in a bad mood. A proactive person acknowledges they can't change the traffic, but they can choose to use the time to listen to an audiobook, reflect, or simply breathe and stay calm. Covey introduces the circle of concern and the circle of influence to explain this habit. Your circle of concern includes everything you care about: the economy, the weather, world events, your job security, other people's opinions. But you can't control most of those things. Your circle of influence, on the other hand, includes what you can control: your thoughts, your behavior, your attitude, and how you treat others. Proactive people focus their energy here, and as they do, their influence expands. Reactive people spend their energy complaining about things they can't change, and their influence shrinks. Covey also emphasizes that our power lies in our freedom to choose our response. Between a stimulus, what happens to us, and our response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose. That's what separates humans from animals: our ability to pause, reflect, and act intentionally. Another example: if your coworker criticizes you, your immediate impulse might be to lash out or shut down. But a proactive person takes a moment and chooses their response. Maybe they say, "Thanks for the feedback. I'll think about it." That response protects your peace and keeps the situation from escalating. Being proactive also means keeping your commitments to yourself and others. If you say you're going to exercise, do it, even if you don't feel like it. That builds self-discipline and trust. Proactive people don't wait for perfect circumstances. They act in alignment with their values. Covey ends this chapter by challenging the reader to use proactive language. Instead of "I can't," say "I choose to." Instead of "if only," say "let's figure this out." It may seem like a small shift, but it reshapes your mindset. In summary, Habit 1 teaches that you are not a victim of your circumstances. You have the power to choose how you think, feel, and act. Being proactive gives you control, confidence, and the ability to shape your own future. It's the first and most important step toward effectiveness in every area of life. This is the summary of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. Habit 2 is about vision, purpose, and direction. Covey challenges us to ask a powerful question: what do you want to be remembered for? When you begin with the end in mind, you think about your life's goals, values, and legacy before making everyday decisions. It's about living intentionally, not just reacting to life but designing it. He invites you to imagine your own funeral. Who will be there? What will they say about you? What kind of friend, parent, colleague, or leader were you? This exercise isn't meant to be morbid. It's meant to clarify your core values so you can live today with purpose. Covey says that without a clear vision of who you want to be and what matters most, it's easy to climb the ladder of success, only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. Let's use an example. Imagine someone spends 30 years working hard to climb the corporate ladder. They earn promotions, buy the big house, get the fancy title, but in the process, they lose connection with their family, neglect their health, and never pursue their true passions. They were successful by the world's standards, but internally they feel empty. Why? Because they never defined what success actually meant to them. Covey teaches that to begin with the end in mind, you must write a personal mission statement. This is a short, powerful statement that defines a who you are, a what you stand for, a what you want your life to be about. It's your internal compass. For example, your mission statement might be to live with integrity, serve others generously, and use my creativity to inspire change. When tough decisions come up, this mission helps you stay aligned with your deeper goals, not just short-term wins. This habit also applies to projects, goals, and relationships. Before you start something, ask, what is my ideal outcome? What values should guide me? How will success look and feel? In relationships, beginning with the end in mind helps avoid conflict and miscommunication. For example, if you're raising children, your end might be raising confident, kind, independent adults. With that goal in mind, your parenting style will shift from control and punishment to guidance and empowerment. Covey also introduces the idea that all things are created twice. 1. First in your mind, your vision. 2. Then in physical reality, your actions. Just like a house is first designed by an architect before it's built, your life should be envisioned mentally before it's lived out daily. In summary, Habit 2 reminds us that living effectively starts with clarity. When you define your personal mission, your time, energy, and decisions start serving your highest purpose. You don't drift, you lead yourself with intention. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. This is the summary of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Habit 3. Put first things first. Habit 3 builds on the foundation of Habits 1 and 2. If Habit 1 is about taking control of your choices, and Habit 2 is about having a clear vision of where you want to go, then Habit 3 is about living according to that vision. It's where your values meet your schedule. In simple terms, this habit is about managing yourself in a way that your daily actions reflect what matters most to you, not just what feels urgent or demanding in the moment. Covey explains that time management is not just about getting more done. It's about doing the right things, those that are aligned with your goals, values, and long-term vision. Effective people don't let distractions or emergencies run their life. They take time to pause, plan, and choose wisely how to spend their time and energy. To explain this idea, Covey introduces a concept called the time management matrix. Instead of using visuals, let's walk through it with a simple explanation. He divides our tasks into 4 types. First, there are activities that are both urgent and important. These are things like deadlines, emergencies, or last-minute problems. You must deal with these immediately, and they require your full attention. That's the first category. The second category is activities that are important, but not urgent. These are the most valuable things you can do. Things like long-term planning, relationship building, exercise, skill development, and quiet time for reflection. They don't shout for your attention, but they lay the foundation for real success and fulfillment. Then there are things that are urgent but not important. These include interruptions, unimportant meetings, or emails that seem pressing but don't really move your goals forward. And finally, there are activities that are neither urgent nor important, things like excessive social media, binge-watching shows, or wasting time in unproductive ways. According to Covey, highly effective people spend most of their time in that second category, important but not urgent. These people plan their weeks ahead of time. They block out time for family, learning, personal health, and deep work. They invest in these things even though there's no immediate payoff, because they know that these habits prevent crises and lead to long-term success. Let's take a real-world example. Suppose you want to write a book. That's important but not urgent. No one's pressuring you to do it. But if you never make time for it, years can pass with no progress. On the other hand, if you set aside just 30 minutes a day to write, over time, the book gets written. That's the power of putting first things first. Covey stresses that this habit is also about having the courage to say no. Many people live by others' schedules, saying yes to every request out of guilt or pressure. But effective people are clear on their priorities. They say yes to what matters and no to what doesn't, even if that no is uncomfortable. This habit also requires you to recognize your multiple roles in life. You are not just an employee or a student. You might also be a parent, a friend, a partner, or a community member. Covey suggests you take time each week to plan your life in terms of these roles. Ask yourself, what's one important thing I can do in each role this week that will make a big difference? This method helps you stay balanced and focused, rather than scattered and reactive. To sum it up, Habit 3 encourages you to live by design, not by default. Take time to pause and ask, are my actions today aligned with the person I want to become? True effectiveness doesn't come from being busy, it comes from being intentional. When you learn to put first things first, you become more focused, peaceful, and powerful in how you lead your life. This is the summary of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Habit 4. Think win-win. Habit 4 introduces a powerful principle that shapes how we interact with others. Covey teaches that truly effective people approach relationships with a win-win mindset. That means they believe in creating outcomes where both sides feel satisfied, respected, and valued, not just one side winning while the other loses. Covey explains that many people are conditioned to think in terms of competition. In school, work, and even relationships, we're often taught that for one person to succeed, someone else has to fail. This is called a win-lose mindset. For example, in a traditional business negotiation, one party might feel proud if they squeeze out every dollar from the other side. But what they don't realize is that long-term relationships, trust, and cooperation suffer when one person always walks away with the upper hand. On the other side, some people live with a lose-win mindset. These are people who give in too easily, say yes to keep the peace, and ignore their own needs. They might seem kind or selfless, but over time, they build resentment, frustration, or low self-esteem. Then there's lose-lose, when both sides are so stubborn or vengeful that everyone ends up worse off. Covey shares an example of 2 business partners who couldn't agree on how to separate their company. Instead of compromising, they both dragged each other into financial ruin just to prove a point. That's lose-lose in action. Win-win, however, is different. It's based on the belief that there's enough success, opportunity, and happiness for everyone. It's not about being soft or weak. It's about being courageous and considerate at the same time. You care about your own needs, but you also care about the other person's success. You look for solutions where everyone walks away feeling respected. To think win-win, you need 2 qualities: a strong character rooted in integrity and maturity, and an abundant mindset. Integrity means you stick to your values. Maturity means you can express your needs clearly while respecting others. And an abundance mindset means you believe the pie can grow bigger instead of fighting over one limited slice. Here's a practical example. Imagine 2 coworkers are both being considered for a leadership role. A win-lose thinker might try to outshine the other person or undermine them. But a win-win thinker might say, "Why don't we lead this project together and show how we can collaborate?" That approach not only builds trust, but it also creates a stronger team result. Covey also emphasizes that win-win is not always about compromise. Compromise often means both sides give something up. Win-win is about being creative enough to find solutions where both parties gain. It might take more effort, more communication, and more trust, but the results are lasting. This habit is especially important in families, friendships, and workplaces. If people feel like they're constantly losing, they disengage. But when they feel heard and valued, they're willing to go further, work harder, and grow together. In summary, Habit 4 is about moving away from rivalry and toward true cooperation. It challenges you to let go of the mindset that for you to win, someone else must lose. Instead, it teaches that in life's most important areas, relationships, partnerships, and leadership, the real goal is to find mutual benefit. When you think win-win, you stop competing and start collaborating. This is the summary of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Habit 5 is about deep communication, the kind that builds trust, connection, and real understanding between people. Covey explains that most people don't actually listen to understand, they listen to reply. They're waiting for their turn to speak, forming answers in their head before the other person has even finished talking. This habit teaches the opposite. Listen first, really listen, with the intent to understand the other person's point of view. Covey calls this kind of listening empathetic listening. It means putting yourself in the other person's shoes, not just hearing their words, but really feeling what they mean. This type of listening goes far beyond just nodding politely. It requires focus, patience, and emotional presence. He gives a clear example of what not to do. Imagine a teenager is upset and tries to open up to a parent. Instead of truly listening, the parent jumps in with quick advice, lectures, or assumptions. The teenager shuts down, not because the advice was wrong, but because they didn't feel heard. Covey says that people don't open up unless they feel safe, and that safety comes from knowing you're truly being listened to. He emphasizes that communication is not just about what's being said, it's about understanding the feelings and needs behind the word. When someone says, "I'm fine," they might really be saying, "I feel ignored." If you respond only to the words, you miss the deeper meaning. But if you listen with empathy, you can ask gentle questions, notice body language, and draw out what's really going on. Habit 5 applies everywhere, in families, friendships, workplaces, and especially in conflict situations. Covey explains that when you take the time to understand another person first, 2 things happen. First, they feel respected and safe. Second, they're much more likely to listen to you when it's your turn to speak. That's the second part of the habit. Then to be understood. After you've listened deeply, it's your time to express your thoughts. But you do it with clarity and care, not with blame or defensiveness. You speak from your values, using calm and respectful language. Because the other person feels heard, they're more open to your message. Let's use a workplace example. Imagine you and a coworker disagree on how to approach a project. Instead of arguing your point right away, you ask them, "Can you help me understand how you see it?" Then you truly listen. Once they've explained, you say, "Thanks for sharing that. Here's how I'm seeing it." This respectful back and forth leads to solutions much faster than a heated debate. Covey makes it clear. Seeking first to understand doesn't mean you have to agree. It just means you're showing respect. You're recognizing the other person's experience as valid, even if you see things differently. In summary, Habit 5 is the foundation of trust-based relationship. If you want to influence others, solve problems, or strengthen bonds, you must learn to listen first, not just with your ears, but with your eyes and heart. When people feel understood, they open up. When you understand them first, they will be much more willing to understand you in return. This is the summary of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Habit 6. Synergize. Habit 6 is all about creative cooperation. Covey introduces the idea of synergy, which he defines as the result of 2 or more people working together in a way that produces a better outcome than either could achieve alone. In simple terms, synergy means that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This habit is built on the principles of trust, open-mindedness, and valuing differences. It's not just about getting along with others. It's about actively leveraging each person's unique strengths to create something new, better, or more effective than what any one individual could have done on their own. Covey explains that synergy is what happens when people truly respect and appreciate differences, in opinions, in thinking styles, in experiences. Instead of resisting those differences or trying to win an argument, synergistic people say, "Let's put our heads together and see if we can come up with a third alternative, one that's better than what either of us initially proposed." To bring this concept to life, imagine 2 coworkers. one who's very detail-oriented and the other who's more big-picture and creative. Alone, the first might get stuck in perfectionism, while the second might overlook critical step. But if they trust and listen to each other, they can create a result that is both imaginative and well executed. That's synergy in action. Another simple example is found in nature. Take geese flying in a V formation. Each goose creates uplift for the one behind it, allowing the entire flock to fly further and more efficiently than if they flew alone. This is synergy, cooperation that amplifies everyone's effectiveness. Covey emphasizes that synergy requires high levels of communication and emotional maturity. You must be willing to really listen, to be vulnerable, to admit when you don't have the answer, and to be curious about others' views. It takes courage and humility to reach that kind of interaction. He also warns that without trust or understanding, people tend to fall into defensive communication. In those cases, synergy can't happen. People dig into their positions, argue, and compete rather than collaborate. That's why Habit 5, listening first, is so crucial to achieving Habit 6. Covey shares that synergy is especially powerful in families, teams, and leadership. When a leader invites real dialogue, rather than dictating solutions, the group becomes more engaged and committed. They don't just follow instructions, they co-create solutions. And those solutions are usually far more innovative, resilient, and effective. In classrooms, synergy happens when students work together on a project, learning not only the subject matter but also how to navigate differences, contribute ideas, and build something meaningful as a group. In summary, Habit 6 encourages us to embrace diversity and collaboration. It challenges us to see people's differences not as threats, but as opportunities for creativity. When we stop trying to control or compete, and instead listen, contribute, and respect, new possibilities open up. Synergy isn't always easy, but it's one of the most powerful forces for effectiveness and positive change. This is the summary of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by Stephen Covey. Habit 7. Sharpen the saw. Habit 7 is about renewal, refreshing and strengthening yourself regularly so that you can continue to grow, perform, and thrive. Covey uses the metaphor of a saw to explain this habit. Imagine someone cutting down a tree with a dull saw. They're working hard, sweating, and making slow progress. A passerby suggests, "Why don't you stop and sharpen the saw?" But the person replies, "I don't have time, I'm too busy sawing." The lesson? If you don't take time to renew yourself, you burn out, slow down, and become less effective. Sharpening the saw means preserving and enhancing your greatest asset, you. Covey breaks this down into 4 key areas: your physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being. When you invest in these areas consistently, you stay balanced, energized, and able to keep improving in every other part of life. First is physical renewal. This includes exercise, nutrition, and rest. Regular movement keeps your body strong, releases stress, and boosts your energy. It's not about extreme workouts. It's about making physical health a daily habit. Skipping it might save time today, but it steals energy and effectiveness tomorrow. Second is mental renewal. This involves reading, learning, problem-solving, and staying mentally active. Just like your body, your mind needs stimulation. Covey encourages people to read regularly, engage with meaningful ideas, and challenge their thinking. Watching mindless content all day weakens your mental sharpness, but reading even 15 minutes a day, listening to a podcast, or learning a new skill keeps your brain sharp. Third is emotional and social renewal. This happens through meaningful relationships, deep connections, acts of kindness, and self-awareness. Spending time with people who uplift you, having honest conversations, forgiving others, and listening with empathy. These activities build emotional strength. They create a support system that fuels your confidence and helps you manage stress and challenges. Fourth is spiritual renewal. This is not necessarily about religion, but rather about connecting with your core values and your sense of purpose. It might include prayer, meditation, spending time in nature, journaling, or reflecting on what truly matters. Spiritual renewal grounds you, giving you inner peace and direction even when life gets chaotic. Covey emphasizes that sharpening the saw isn't a one-time event. It's a continuous habit. Just like brushing your teeth or eating healthy, it's something you need to do consistently, not only when you're feeling overwhelmed. Let's use an example. Imagine a manager who never takes breaks, skips meals, avoids difficult conversations, and never reflects on their purpose. Over time, they become exhausted, irritable, and uninspired. Now imagine another manager who takes a 30-minute walk every day, reads for 10 minutes, has regular family dinners, and journals once a week. The second person will not only perform better, they'll also feel more fulfilled and resilient. Sharpening the saw helps you avoid burnout and breakdowns. It prepares you to respond to life's challenges with strength, wisdom, and clarity. And it supports all the other 6 habits, because you can't be proactive, think clearly, or cooperate well with others if your tank is empty. In summary, habit 7 is the habit of self-renewal. It's about taking care of your body, feeding your mind, nurturing your relationships, and reconnecting with your purpose. It's not selfish, it's essential. The better you care for yourself, the more effective, compassionate, and impactful you can be in every area of life. This is the summary of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by Stephen Covey, Final Reflections and Conclusion. As the book comes to a close, Stephen Covey invites readers to step back and reflect on the entire journey of the 7 habits. These habits aren't just tips or techniques to be used once. They are a framework for lasting personal and interpersonal effectiveness, grounded in principles that never go out of style. Covey's final message is clear. If you want to lead a meaningful, successful life, you must build it from the inside out. This means first mastering yourself, your thoughts, your decisions, your values, and then building strong, trusting relationships with others. The habits are arranged intentionally. The first 3, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. Focus on private victory. This is the internal strength and discipline you build on your own. Without these, it's hard to show up fully for others. These habits help you take charge of your life, clarify your purpose, and act intentionally. The next 3 habits: think win-win, seek first to understand then to be understood, and synergize, are about public victory. These involve how you relate to other people. They help you build deep trust, collaborate effectively, and resolve conflicts with respect and creativity. Covey reminds us that success with others always begins with strength within yourself. Habit 7, sharpen the saw, is about continuous renewal. It supports and sustains all the other habits. Life will always bring stress, challenges, and change. But if you take care of your body, mind, heart, and spirit, you'll have the strength to stay grounded, focused, and resilient. Covey emphasizes that these habits are not quick fixes. You don't just read them and instantly transform your life. It takes time, effort, and daily practice. But the reward is worth it. A life that's not just successful on the surface, but deeply aligned with your values, purpose, and potential. He also reminds us that this book isn't the end. It's a beginning. The true power of the 7 habits comes when you apply them to real situations, in your family, your career, your community, and your personal growth. These habits can help you become a better parent, a stronger leader, a more trusted friend, and a more confident, peaceful version of yourself. In his conclusion, Covey shares a message of hope. No matter where you're starting from, change is possible. You are not stuck with the habits, thoughts, or results you've had until now. If you begin taking small, consistent steps, guided by the 7 habits, you will grow. And as you grow, the people around you grow too. Your family, your team, your environment, they all benefit from your transformation. In summary, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is more than a book. It's a guide to living a principle-centered life, a life of integrity, contribution, and fulfillment. Covey leaves us with one final challenge. Don't just know the habit, live them, practice them, become them, because effectiveness is not a destination, it's a daily way of being.